On the last night of winter in northern Vermont, March 19, 2004, 17-year-old Brianna Maitland finished a shift at the Black Lantern Inn in Montgomery and stepped into the cold. It was just after 11:20 p.m., the end of a quiet evening in the kitchen. She got into her pale green 1985 Oldsmobile 88 and drove off alone. By the next afternoon, her car would be found in a place and position so odd that it still arrests the imagination, backed hard into the side of an abandoned farmhouse a short mile from the inn, as if it had been swallowed by the building. Brianna herself was gone. In the years since, her disappearance has haunted Vermont, drawing waves of searches, tips, national coverage, and, 2 decades later, a renewed push with a substantial FBI reward and modern forensic work. The case remains officially unsolved, but not forgotten and not cold. That Friday had started as a hopeful one. According to contemporary press accounts summarized by local reporters years later, Brianna spent the day taking her GED exam and then having lunch with her mother to mark the milestone. Her father was working out of state. Brianna was living with a friend in nearby Sheldon and juggling work while figuring out her next steps. Nothing about those daytime hours, at least in public view, forecast the mystery to come. Late that night, after the kitchen closed, a co-worker watched Brianna clock out and head to the parking lot. She told colleagues she was tired and needed to get home. She had plans to work again the next day. It was a small, ordinary decision that anchor points the timeline. The last confirmed sighting of Brianna around 11:20 p.m., leaving work alone. The next afternoon, March 20th, a Vermont State Police trooper was dispatched to a report of an abandoned car along Vermont Route 118. He found Brianna's Oldsmobile at the old Dutchburn farmhouse, a shuttered place locals knew from the bend in the road. The sedan had been backed into the building at an odd angle. The rear bumper hung up on the foundation. The doors were unlocked. The keys were missing. Inside were 2 unopened paychecks from the Black Lantern Inn made out to Brianna. Not yet knowing anyone was missing, the trooper treated the scene like a routine abandoned vehicle call, had the car towed to a local yard, and tried to track down the paycheck name. But the restaurant was closed. The discovery wouldn't be connected to a missing person for days. Because of that gap, the early hours slipped away. Brianna's friends and family didn't immediately realize she hadn't made it back. When her mother began calling around on Tuesday, March 23rd, and nothing turned up, she filed a missing person report. 2 days later, on March 25th, Brianna's parents brought photographs to the state police barracks. A trooper showed them a picture of the Oldsmobile wedged into the farmhouse. They recognized it instantly. From that moment forward, a routine tow became something else, and a rural road became the axis of an unfolding investigation. State police scoured the area on foot and with dogs. The car was processed at the state crime lab. For a time, as often happens with teenagers who leave without explanation, investigators weighed the possibility that she had simply taken off. But as the days passed, evidence and context pushed the case in a darker direction. Ultimately, authorities publicly said they believed Brianna was the victim of foul play. Years later, they would also stress something equally important to her family. The case was not a cold case, but an open, active one. The long investigation picked up and discarded theories as it went. Some early leads were checked and went nowhere. A widely discussed suggestion that her case might be connected to the disappearance of New Hampshire nursing student Maura Murray, who vanished a month earlier, was examined and dismissed by law enforcement. Another thread surfaced 8 years on, when federal agents took a hard look at whether itinerant serial killer Israel Keyes could be tied to Brianna's disappearance. The FBI ruled him out in December 2012, citing records that showed he was elsewhere the night she vanished. In other words, a possible answer that wasn't one. If the 2000s were the years of searching fields and knocking on doors, the 2010 and 2020 were the years of forensics. Investigators had collected an item from the ground near the car during a canine search roughly a week after the disappearance, and a DNA profile was eventually developed from it. In 2020, the Vermont State Police sent that DNA to Othram, a lab specializing in forensic genetic genealogy. After genealogical work and follow-up comparisons by the Vermont Forensic Laboratory, detectives announced in March 2022 that they had identified the source of that DNA. It was an investigative breakthrough, but it did not yield a suspect. The person whose DNA it was cooperated with the detectives, and police emphasized the identification alone did not mean they had found the perpetrator. Still, it was a sign the case was being worked with modern tools, not simply preserved in amber. On March 19, 2024, the 20th anniversary of that night, the FBI and Vermont State Police stood together and tried to shake loose new information. They announced a reward of up to $40,000 for information leading to Brianna's recovery. The special agent in charge of the FBI's Albany field office put it plainly: someone out there knows something. The state police director echoed a promise that mattered to the family, saying again that this remains an unsolved case, not a cold one. The reward, they hoped, would bring forward the person who can finally bridge the last gap in the story. Seen whole, the undisputed spine of the case is stark. Brianna leaves work around 11:20 p.m. A mile down the road, her car is later found backed into an abandoned farmhouse, unlocked, with the keys missing and paychecks inside. In the days before anyone realizes she's missing, the car is towed. From there, the investigation spools forward through methodical police work, dead-end tips, national attention, and new forensics, but no confirmed sighting of Brianna after she drove away from the inn. 2 decades on, the official description of the case hasn't changed. She is missing, and presumed the victim of foul play. What also endures is the human piece. Her family and a small town had to meet the unthinkable and then live with it year after year. Her father founded a nonprofit to help other families hire private investigators when cases stall, a way to convert grief into momentum for someone else's search. Reporters still revisit the story, not to sensationalize it, but because it remains unclosed, and because the details at its core, an ordinary night, a short drive, a car found scarcely a mile away, keep insisting there must be an answer that can be reached. As of today, the reward is still active, and the case is still open. If there is one through line from that farmhouse to the present, it's the persistence of the people working it, and their belief that a single person's memory or courage could complete the timeline at last. Anyone with information can contact the FBI or the Vermont State Police. The FBI's missing person page for Brianna remains online, and detectives continue to review new tips. In a case defined by minutes and miles, that one call matters,